Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by asking you a simple question. What's stopping you? Not your neighbor, not your boss, not the economy, not the government. You. What's stopping you is you. And what do we usually use to defend ourselves from the truth? Excuses. Excuses are the lies we tell ourselves to feel better about, not showing up, not growing, and not doing the work. Today I'm going to talk about why you must leave your excuses behind. If you want to build a better life, a richer life, a stronger mind, a more meaningful existence. Let me tell you something I learned early on in life, and it changed everything for me. Excuses sound best to the one who's making them. Now, doesn't that just hit you? I mean, really think about it. You see, we're all pretty clever. We can justify just about anything to ourselves. We can wrap up procrastination in a nice little package and call it being careful. We call laziness waiting for the right moment. We tell ourselves, I don't have the resources, when the truth is, we haven't yet developed the resourcefulness. Excuses. They're clever. They're subtle. And worst of all, they're dangerous. One of the great lessons I learned from a mentor early on, he said, Jim, if you keep arguing for your excuses, you get to keep them, but you also get to keep the results that come with them. Let that sink in. You see, excuses are nothing more than lies we tell ourselves to feel better in the short term. They are a soft pillow we lay our dreams on while we take a nap from responsibility. And boy, that nap, it can last years, sometimes a lifetime. You know what excuses really are? They're fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of change, fear of judgment, fear of success. That's right, even success scares some people, because once you succeed, you've got to maintain it. Now that's a heavy load if you've only been exercising your excuses and not your discipline. I talk to people all the time who say, Jim, I'd really like to start my own business, but you don't understand. I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got bills. And I say, I understand. But let me ask you something, who doesn't? Everyone's got challenges. The question is not if you have them. The question is what you're going to do about them. Excuses give us an escape route. They steer like a trap door in the floor of accountability. You steer standing there, someone asks you to do better, be better, and boom, you pull the cord and disappear under a mountain of reasons. But let me tell you, reasons and results live in different neighborhoods. One is crowded with the voices of complaint, the other is quiet, focused, and productive. Now don't get me wrong. I understand pain. I understand hardship. Not everything that holds people back is imaginary. But here's what separates successful people from the rest: they choose to respond differently. Where one man sees a wall, another sees a chance to climb. Where one woman says it's impossible, another says I'll find a way. And I promise you this, those who win, those who build, lead, grow, they are not without fear, they are just without excuses. You know what's worse than a failed attempt? A lifetime of excuses. Because at least failure teaches you something. Excuses just buy you time. You can't learn, you can't earn, and you sure can't grow with them. So if you want to get ahead in life, one of the first and best things you can do is get real honest with yourself. Catch your excuses in the act. Hunt them down. Interrupt them mid-sentence. The moment you hear yourself say, I can stit, because pause, stop, rewrite the sentence. I can stit, yet because I haven't learned how, but I can. That's how you begin to shift. That's how the magic starts. Excuses will always be available. Opportunities won't. So don't spend your life becoming a master excuse maker. Become a master of your time, your mind, your choices, and the life you want will begin to respond. Like the law of the harvest, you don't reap unless you sow. Excuses, they're like planting weeds and wondering why you didn't get roses. So trade your excuses for effort. Trade your doubt for discipline. And trade your old story for a new standard. And life Life will meet you at the level of your commitment, not your excuse. Let me share a thought with you that's both simple and profound. Every excuse you make today is a debt you'll have to pay tomorrow. You may not feel the cost right away. It's not like a bill that shows up in your mailbox, but believe me, it adds up. Little by little, excuse by excuse, you begin to pay the price in lost time, missed opportunities, and unrealized potential. You see, success doesn't usually collapse in one big dramatic moment. No, it slips away quietly. One day of I'll do it later becomes a week becomes a month becomes a year, and one day you look around and wonder how you ended up so far behind. And the truth is, you didn't lose the time. You spent it. But instead of investing it into your growth, your goals, your dreams, you spent it making excuses. That's the tragedy of it all. Excuses feel like nothing. They're light. They're casual. But the cost. Oh, the cost. Oh, the cost is heavy. It's a life half-lived. It's dreams unpursued. It's potential buried under years of justification. Now, someone might say, but Jim, my excuse is real. I don't have the resources. I didn't get the right start. I wasn't born into the right family. And I say I understand. But let me tell you this. Lots of people start with less. Some start with nothing at all. And yet they win. They build. They rise. So it's not the conditions. It's the decision. The decision to stop letting your past write your future. The decision to stop believing that circumstances control your outcome. Because here's what I know. Excuses will never take you where you want to go. They'll only give you a reason to stay where you are. Now, why do we keep making them? It's simple. Excuses take the pressure off. They let us off the hook. They help us feel better about not doing better. But here's the danger. Every time you excuse your inaction, you reinforce your limitation. You teach your brain that it's okay to retreat. You reward yourself for staying stuck. Let's put it another way. Excuses are comfort food for the mind. They taste good now, but they leave you sluggish and stuck. They rob you of your hunger. They kill your ambition. And here's something important. The world doesn't reward excuses. It rewards results. It rewards effort. It rewards the person who shows up, even when they don't feel like it, even when it's hard, even when they're tired or uncertain or afraid. So ask yourself this. What has your last excuse cost you? Maybe it cost you an opportunity, a relationship, a breakthrough. Maybe it cost you confidence. You said no to growth so many times. Now you're not sure you've got what it takes anymore. But here's the good news. You can stop the bleeding today. You can draw the line right now and say, from this point forward, I trade excuses for action. I trade fear for discipline. I trade comfort for growth. Because the future doesn't belong to the excuse makers. It belongs to the doers, the learners, the grinders, the ones who push through discomfort because they know the reward is worth the risk. Every minute you spend making an excuse is a minute you could spend making progress. And if you start stacking enough of those minutes in your favor, one day you'll wake up in a life that looks exactly like the one you once dreamed of. Not because you were lucky, but because you stopped paying the price of excuses and started collecting the rewards of discipline. And that, my friend, is a price worth paying. You know, one of the greatest turning points in my life, and I mean the kind of moment you never forget, was when I learned a simple truth. If it's to be, it's up to me. That line hit me like a lightning bolt. I stopped in my tracks because for the first time, I understood what personal responsibility really meant. Not just as a nice phrase or an inspirational quote, but as a way of life. You see, most people spend their whole life looking out the window and now pointing fingers, blaming the economy, blaming their parents, blaming their boss, the weather, the government, the news. But the people who succeed, they look in the mirror, they say, I'm not waiting for anyone else to fix this. I am the solution. I am the difference maker. Now that's not easy. Responsibility doesn't always feel good at first. In fact, it's heavy. Because when you take responsibility, you take ownership of not just your success, but your failures too. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what can I do about it? That shift right there is the secret. It's not about fault, it's about response. You may not be responsible for what happened to you, but you're responsible for how you respond. And that's where all your power is. That's where your transformation begins. You see, the moment you stop blaming is the moment you start building. You shift from being a victim of your life to becoming the author of your life. And the author gets to decide how the next chapter goes. Now, some people will say, Jim, you don't understand. I wasn't given a fair shot. And I get it. Life isn't fair. I didn't say it was, but here's what I learned. Success doesn't ask where you started. It asks what you're doing now. Taking responsibility means saying, yes, I had setbacks. Yes, I had disadvantages. But I sit not going to live there. It's sit not going to camp in that story. I sit and going to get to work on a better one. And here's something else I noticed. Once you start living with full responsibility, something incredible happens. You stop waiting. You stop waiting for motivation, for inspiration, for a break, for permission. You stop waiting for someone to believe in you because you believe in you. And people around you, they notice. They see the difference because there's a strength, a certainty in a person who's taken full responsibility. You don't complain anymore. You don't gossip. You don't look for shortcuts. You've taken the wheel. And people follow those who lead their own life with clarity. Now, don't misunderstand me. Responsibility doesn't mean perfection. You'll still make mistakes. You'll fall down. But now, instead of whining about it, you learn. You adapt. You grow. You say, what can I take from this? How can I be better because of it? That's how winners think. So let me ask you, what area of your life have you been avoiding responsibility for? Your health, your finances, your relationships, your mindset? Wherever it is, start there. Own it. Don't rent it. Don't lease it. Own it outright. Because the moment you say, I'm responsible, you become unstoppable. It's not always glamorous. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. The rewards of responsibility are pride, progress, and power. The kind of power that builds businesses, strengthens families, and creates legacies. And all it takes to unlock it is a decision. A simple, bold decision to take your life into your own hands and never again hand it over to excuses, blame, or fear. Because when you take responsibility, you take back your future. One of the greatest illusions people buy into is the idea of perfect conditions. You've heard it before, maybe even said it yourself. I'll start when the timing is right, when I have more money, when the kids are older, when the economy improves, when I feel ready. Sound familiar? Let me tell you something, my friend. There is no such thing as the perfect time. See, the people waiting for perfect conditions are usually the same people still standing in the same place 10 years later. Because perfect doesn't come knocking. Perfect doesn't leave a note on your door saying, hey, now's the moment to change your life. It just doesn't work like that. Life doesn't wait for your convenience. Opportunity doesn't show up with a bow on top. It shows up as a challenge wrapped in a little bit of chaos and uncertainty. Let me give you a little wisdom I picked up early on. Don't wait for all the lights to turn green before you leave the house. If you do, you'll never go anywhere. Success is not about having it all figured out. It's about starting with what you have, from where you are, and trusting that the rest will unfold as you go. Now, I'm not saying don't plan. I believe in strategy. I believe in preparation. But what I've learned is that you can't prepare your way into perfect. At some point, you've got to take a step, even if you're scared, even if it's messy, even if you don't have all the answers yet. The people who achieve great things in life aren't the ones with the best timing or the most resources. They're the ones who got started. That's the secret. They moved. They didn't wait for the storm to pass. they learn to sail their ship right through it. Some folks spend their whole life waiting for the wind to blow just right. But winners, they don't wait for the wind. They adjust their sails. They say, I may not have the ideal tools, but I got tools. I may not know everything, but I know enough to begin. I've met people who've told me, Jim, I'll start saving when I make more money. But let me ask you something. If you won't save $1 out of 10, what makes you think you'll save 100 out of 1,000? Habits don't come from having more, they come from doing more with what you already have. Perfect is a myth. Progress is real. The truth is, the more you wait for perfect, the more likely you are to hesitate. And hesitation breeds doubt. Doubt kills momentum. And once momentum is gone, the dream usually follows. That's why I tell people, take action now. Not tomorrow, not next Monday. Now. Small steps, big steps, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you move. Because while you're waiting for the stars to align, someone else is out there making the most of what they've got. They're failing, learning, adjusting, and growing. And 5 years from now, they'll be living a life that you were only planning to start. So stop waiting. The time will never be just right. Conditions will never be perfect. And you'll never feel fully ready. That's okay. The path becomes clear once you start walking it. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes because of action. So let today be the day you trade in perfection for progress. The day you stop waiting and start working. Because while the perfect moment may never arrive, this moment right here is yours. And if you take it, if you seize it, it just might become the moment everything starts to change. You know, when I talk to people about success, they often want to know the big secrets. Jim, they say, what's the one thing I need to do to turn my life around? What's the one thing successful people know that the rest of us don't? And I always smile, because the answer isn't glamorous, it isn't dramatic. And it sure isn't complicated. You ready for it? Small disciplines, practice daily. That's it. See, most people are out there looking for some huge breakthrough, some magical moment that's going to change everything. They're waiting for lightning to strike. But success doesn't come from one big thing. It comes from doing the small things over and over, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Let me put it this way. Excuses demand very little from you, but discipline asks for consistency. It asks for intention. It asks for effort day after day, even when no one's watching, even when there's no immediate reward. You see, excuses are easy. They're soft. They let you off the hook. You don't need to change. You don't need to stretch. But discipline holds up a mirror and says, let's be better today. It asks you to trade short-term comfort for long-term gain. And that's not always fun, but I promise you it's always worth it. Let me give you an example. Reading 10 pages of a good book every day might not seem like much. It's not flashy. It's not exciting. But you do that for a year and you've read 3,650 pages. That's 10 books or more. That's new ideas, new vocabulary, new perspectives, all from 10 minutes a day. Or how about this? Walk for 30 minutes each day. Doesn't sound life-changing, right? But what happens after 90 days? Your energy is up, your mind is clearer, your confidence has increased, and not because you made some massive change, but because you made a tiny commitment and kept it. Discipline compounds. That's the magic of it. It starts small and grows strong. And here's the kicker. The same is true for excuses. Skip one day and it feels harmless. But skip the next and suddenly you're out of rhythm. Keep skipping. And now you've built a habit of avoidance. One excuse becomes 2, becomes 10, becomes your story. Discipline is the antidote. It says, I may not feel like it today, but I do it anyway. Why? Because that's who I'm becoming. Because I'm building trust with myself. Because the man or woman I want to be is on the other side of this habit. And let me be clear. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. You still slip. You still stumble. That's part of the game. But discipline picks you back up and says, let's not miss twice. Now here's the beautiful part. Once you build even a little discipline, it starts to spread. You get up earlier and suddenly you've got time to plan. You start eating better. And now you've got more energy to create. You read a book and suddenly your conversations are sharper. Discipline in one area starts to improve every area. So the next time your mind offers you an excuse, I'm tired, I'm busy, I'll start tomorrow. Remember this, your excuses are strong, but your discipline is stronger. You just have to use it. Decide today to become a person of daily discipline. Not perfection, not extremes, just someone who shows up, who follows through, who does the small things when no one's watching, because they know those small things create big results. And that, my friend, is the secret. Not motivation, not luck, not magic, just a quiet, steady commitment to discipline done daily with purpose and with pride. One of the most powerful influences on your life, one that most people underestimate, is your environment. And I don't mean your physical surroundings, I mean the people you choose to spend your time with. Let me tell you something I learned that changed the way I lived. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now that ought to make you stop and think. Take a good look at your circle. What are they doing? What are they talking about? Are they encouraging you to grow? Or are they feeding your excuses? Are they stretching you or soothing you into staying the same? See, you can't rise if your environment is built to keep you small. It's just not possible. You could have all the ambition in the world, all the talent, all the desire, but if you're surrounded by people who don't believe in change, who don't push for excellence, who settle for just enough, then over time, you'll start to settle too. Here's what I've learned. Excuses love company. Complainers attract other complainers. People who blame love to sit around with others who also point fingers, and if you're not careful, you'll find yourself spending hours, days, even years in rooms full of people who are great at making excuses and terrible at making progress. But winners don't talk like that. Winners talk solutions. They talk goals. They talk action. They challenge each other. They hold each other accountable. When you say, I'm tired, they say, do it anyway. When you say it's too hard, they say, that's why it matters. They don't let your excuses sit around unchallenged. That's the kind of circle you want. Because the right people won't let you play small. They'll remind you who you are when you forget. They'll lift you up when you're weak. And they'll call you out when you're slacking. That's not judgment. That's love. That's leadership. I remember a time when I was surrounded by people who didn't challenge me. They were nice, polite, but they didn't push. And for a while, I stayed stuck, comfortable, going through the motions. But once I got around people who were hungry, people who had vision, discipline, goals, that energy rubbed off on me. I couldn't make excuses anymore, not in front of them. I had to level up, and that decision to change my circle, it changed my entire life. Now, I'm not saying you should judge or abandon every person in your life who isn't growing, but I am saying be intentional about who has the most influence over your mindset. Because if you want to grow, you've got to feed your mind the right conversations, the right challenges, the right company. Find people who are better than you in some area. People who make you uncomfortable in a good way. People who've done what you want to do. Learn from them. Watch them. Ask questions. Success leaves clues, but you have to be close enough to study them. Your circle should reflect your future, not your past. Surround yourself with those who inspire action, not excuses. And when you do, something amazing happens. You start thinking bigger, talking bolder, acting faster, because greatness is contagious. So take inventory. Who's pushing you forward? Who's pulling you back? Who's reminding you of your power? And who's convincing you to stay realistic? Make the hard choices, if you have to, because your future depends on your environment. Remember, you're not just choosing friends, you're choosing your standards. Choose wisely, because in the end you rise or fall with your circle. So build one that lifts, one that believes, one that calls you to your best every single day.